welcome to another Whisper. Before getting into the video, I want to tell you about our dream, reaching 1,000 subscribers. If you enjoy our content and wish to help us achieve that, please consider subscribing to our channel. You are greatly appreciated. Now let's get into the video. Deep in the remote forests of Brazil, there is a legend known to only the bravest souls who dare to speak its name, the Bradador. Its story has been whispered by generations, warning travelers to never venture too far into the wilderness after dark, especially when the night is still and the air grows unnaturally quiet. The Bradador is said to be a spirit, a tormented soul whose cries echo through the trees, luring the unwary into the depths of the forest from which they never return. The legend tells of a man who once roamed these woods, his name long forgotten by history but his suffering etched into the very earth. He was a hunter, a man who lived by the land, and yet, one fateful day, his life was shattered by a terrible tragedy. His family, his wife, his young son, were taken from him, lost in a mysterious accident that left no trace. Devastated, he wandered into the forest, searching for them, his mind unraveling with grief. Days turned to weeks, and weeks to months, but he could not escape the overwhelming sorrow that consumed him. His cries, filled with anguish, rang through the forest, and as he fell deeper into madness, the forest itself seemed to absorb his pain. The hunter died, though no one knows how or when. Some say he starved, others say he was taken by the creatures of the forest, but all agree on one thing: his wails never stopped. To this day, his spirit roams the woods, eternally searching for his lost loved ones. But now, those who hear his cries are said to be marked, drawn into the forest by a force they cannot resist, only to vanish, just as his family did. Years later, a group of 6 friends decided to hike through a remote part of the Brazilian wilderness. They were young, adventurous, and excited to explore the uncharted paths that few dared to walk. The leader of the group, Lucas, had heard of the Bradador but dismissed it as nothing more than a campfire story, a tale to scare children into staying close to home. He was confident that there was nothing to fear in the forest, only the beauty of nature and the thrill of discovery. The group set out early in the morning, eager to make their way deeper into the forest. The first day passed without incident, and they made camp by a small stream, laughing and sharing stories as the sun dipped below the horizon. As night fell, the air grew cooler, and the once lively forest seemed to hold its breath. It was then that they heard it, a low, distant wail that echoed through the trees. At first, they thought it was the wind, but as the sound grew louder and more distinct, the laughter died on their lips. What was that? Maria, the youngest of the group, whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Lucas shrugged, trying to maintain his composure. Probably just some animal. We're in the middle of the forest, remember? But as the night wore on, the cries continued, growing more agonized, more desperate. It was as if the very forest was mourning. The sounds seemed to come from all directions, disorienting them, and no matter how hard they tried to ignore it, sleep eluded them. The next morning, they packed up quickly, eager to leave the eerie atmosphere behind. As they continued their hike, strange things began to happen. The forest seemed to shift around them. Paths they had taken just hours before now led in different directions, and landmarks they had marked on their map were nowhere to be found. The cries, once distant, now seemed to follow them, never far behind. The group became tense, bickering over which way to go, but no matter which path they chose, they found themselves circling back to the same spot, a clearing with a single, ancient tree at its center. By the 3rd day, panic had set in. Food was running low, and the wails had become unbearable, echoing in their minds even during the brief moments of silence. Then, one by one, the group began to disappear. It started with Carlos. He wandered away from the camp during the night, saying he'd go find help, but he never returned. The others searched for him, calling his name, but all they heard was the relentless wailing of the Bradador. Next, it was Elena. She was the quiet one, always trailing behind the group, but one afternoon, she simply wasn't there anymore. No one had seen her leave. Her backpack was left behind, as if she had vanished into thin air. Fear gripped the remaining 4. They clung to each other, refusing to stray from the camp, but it didn't matter. The forest had claimed them. The third night, Pedro and Maria disappeared together, leaving only Lucas and Sofia. By now, they were half crazed with terror, convinced that the Bradador was watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. On the final night, the wails were deafening, surrounding them on all sides. Sofia sobbed, clutching Lucas's arm, begging him to do something, but there was nothing he could do. In the darkness, something moved, shadows shifting among the trees, eyes gleaming in the faint light of the dying fire. And then, just like the others, Sofia was gone. Lucas was alone. The cries of the Bradador were now inside his head, filling him with a despair so deep he could barely stand. He staggered into the clearing, collapsing at the foot of the ancient tree. It was then that he saw them, his friends, standing in a circle around him, their faces blank, their eyes empty. And in the center of them, the Bradador stood, his mouth open in an eternal scream. No one ever found Lucas or his friends. Their families searched the forest for weeks, but all they ever found were scraps of clothing, torn and scattered among the trees. The legend of the Bradador grew, passed down to a new generation of travelers, warning them to stay far away from the cursed forest, where the wails of the lost still echo in the night. If you enjoyed watching this creepy tale about the Bradador and isn't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing to our channel. We bring you daily spine-chilling stories, and it means a lot to us. Thank you for your time. See you on my next Whisper.